Is the Sony A7R IV digital camera right for you? In this very detailed video, you'll see lots of images and hands-on demonstrations of its stills and video features. Hey photographers, you want high-quality images. Will 60 megapixels do? How about 240 megapixels? You want fast autofocus combined with a high burst rate. Will a 7-second burst of 10 perfectly focused images per second do? And you want great low-light performance. Will a 10-stop range from ISO 100 to 102,400 do? Now this is the Sony A7R Model 4. I'm going to call it the A7R IV, although Sony calls it the ILCE 7R M4. There's no question that for many purposes this is the best camera of 2019. Now admittedly, it does not hit every mark. It has a few issues and it's not the perfect camera. So let me give you an honest and detailed look. This is a long video, so please use the menu in the description to navigate to the parts that interest you. I'm going to go through the setup options and start with the camera in full manual mode. Then we'll add the automated features, first exposure, then focus, then color and drive modes. Finally, we'll get to video. Sony included two G Master lenses, the 24-70 and the 70-200. I'll discuss those as we go. From the 60 megapixel full-frame sensor to unlimited length video recording, this camera covers all the bases. 5-axis stabilization, time-lapse, log video recording, phase detect focus with face and eye detection for humans and pets. This first bit is dense and techy, but it will help you understand how to set up the camera. Slide the right side port cover forward to release. The A7R IV has two SD card slots. Sony's tradition of putting cards in backwards remains. Slide it back to close. It doesn't snap automatically. When powered up the first time, after selecting language and setting time, you're invited to install Sony Imaging Edge. This includes Sony's mobile and desktop apps. I'll get to those near the end. Press the menu key. It's on the left. I find that slightly awkward. I'd prefer to be able to open the menu with my right hand, so I don't have to reposition hands while shooting. By default, Sony does not enable all of the best qualities of this camera. The menu combines stunning flexibility and functionality with staggering complexity. Format is on Setup, the 5th tab, and on the 5th screen, the 5th item. When I become product manager for the A7 series, my first task will be to move it to 111. The image display SDXC2 shows the capability of the slot, not the type of card inserted. On the first of the 15 camera screens, the JPEG size is set to L. That's 60 megapixels, 9500 by 6300 or so resolution. While that's good, I'm changing the JPEG quality from fine to extra fine. Add RAW if you plan to edit your photos. The 14-bit RAW files can be saved as compressed or uncompressed. There are 4 aspect ratios, and while useful, all are lower resolution than 3:2. And if you'd like to see how many photos those settings allow on the cards you have installed, Setup Screen 6 displays the media info, which shows for both stills and video. Of course, it also appears top left in the full settings display on the shooting screen. It looks like there's only one card installed, so under Format is Rec Media Settings, again with a handy reference graphic. Prioritize selects which card to use. Modes Multiple Options decides what goes where. Standard records to the prioritized card. Simult Image records a backup. Each image is saved to both cards. Simult Video does the same for video recordings. Simult Both, you get the idea. The first sort saves RAW to the preferred card, JPEG to the other. The second is the reverse. And you can also save video and stills on separate cards. Auto Switch, which is effective only when Mode Standard is selected, switches to the other card when the prioritized card is full. And now, both cards display on the shooting screen. Incidentally, don't be confused by Camera Screen 4. This media select refers to the Screen 3's memory recall settings. The last two options here should be on the next screen with Select Media. In the next menu section, after the video options, Screen 5 has the shutter options. Your choice here depends on your needs, so if you need silent, activate it here. Otherwise, if you want a full mechanical front and back shutter, turn off the electronic front curtain. The silent is fully silent. With a 1-second exposure, the electronic front sounds like this, and full mechanical like this. Go on to Screen 8 if you'd like to see the image you've just taken, and turn on Auto Review to the duration you prefer. Screen 11 will mute all audio signals, including those for focus, and to indicate the start and stop of video recording, I prefer to have those on. Setup Screen 1 sets the monitor brightness for the LCD. The sunny weather setting is very useful. The screen is a 7.5 cm TFT with a 1.4 million dot resolution. And set the power off time. Although Sony's touch options are limited, if you want to use the touch to focus, turn on touch. And on the next screen you can add pad, which lets the screen serve as the touchpad to select focus while shooting with the viewfinder. There are options for absolute or relative. I prefer relative, and which area is active. Right works for me. Use Screen 5 to set up your copyright information, and Screen 6 for the file and folder naming options. And now we're ready to shoot. And I'm going to start with manual settings and then add auto exposure, focus, and color options. I'm shooting with the G Master 24 to 70mm lens. A constant f2.8 aperture, it closes to f22. It adds 886 grams to the A7R IV's 665 grams for a total slightly over 1.5 kilos. There's a marked manual zoom ring and an unmarked focus ring for focus by wire. A switch to lock the lens at 24mm, a switch for auto or manual focus. My favorite control is this button. Using the custom key menu, I assign it to Eye Autofocus, then press to focus. This is nearly magic, and it spoils you for any camera lens combo that doesn't do this. Filter diameters 82mm, closest focus 38 centimeters. Although there's no parfocal indication, it seems to hold focus nicely as I zoom. The viewfinder has a very high 5.76 million dot resolution OLED screen. It is exceptionally bright and clear. Turn on high quality for 120 frame refresh, and that's supposed to reduce the moire, but in this scene the moire on the roof was reduced but not eliminated. In darker scenes like this sunset, there was quite a bit of noise in dark areas. For manual exposure, turn the mode dial, it's a push and turn type, to M, and on screen 9, turn the ISO setting to anything other than auto. Metering mode selects from multi, center weighted, spot, full screen, and highlight. The meter reading is displayed beside the white square with the M&M. Across the bottom of the screen you'll see the shutter speed, which is adjusted using the unlabeled back-facing dial beside the exposure compensation dial, and then the aperture, adjusted using the front-facing dial in front of the shutter button. ISO is on the right and adjusted using the right side of the control dial, but this makes the meter go away, so it's a trial and error process. To reference a histogram, press DISP, the top of the control dial, until it appears. It also disappears while adjusting the ISO. Shutter speeds can be set from 1/8000 to 30 seconds. In manual, bulb mode is available. There's no bulb timer to program exposures longer than 30 seconds. ISO can be set from 50, although under 100 is compromised, up to 102,400. Again, over 32,000 is less than ideal. These are straight out of camera JPEGs, and let's look at a pixel for pixel 8 megapixel close-up. That noise isn't really noticeable until 12,800, and while 51,200 and 102,400 are noisy, the color remains accurate. Let's go back to full screen, and while 102 is noisy, 51.2 isn't bad. To automate exposure, use the aperture, shutter, or program modes. In program, use either dial to select alternate aperture-shutter combinations, which also provide the correct exposure. The exposure compensation dial is the push-to-lock, push-to-unlock type, 3 stops up and down. To automate ISO, use the autoISO setting, which can be configured with both a minimum and a maximum. And Sony's autoISO shutter speed can be set to a specific value, as well as standard, fast, faster, slow, and slower. The standard exposes this aperture priority scene at ISO 500 with a 1/30th shutter. Slower drops the ISO to 125 with a 1/8 shutter. Faster, which prioritizes the shutter speed, selects a 1/125 shutter with a 2000 ISO. Select Manual Focus from the Fun menu, then turn the lens ring. The screen displays an expanded view. You can move the selected area using the joystick. There's a distance meter that includes a numerical display. Soft press the shutter to return to the whole scene. Now in video mode, the punch-in doesn't happen automatically. Assign a custom key to magnifier, and then press once to set the area, again to punch in, focus, and then again to return. Video shooters may also like to activate the peaking display, so as long as we're here, assign that to the other custom key. Status is indicated at the bottom of the screen. Configure it back on screen 14, where you can choose from 3 levels and 4 colors. There are 4 autofocus modes: single shot, continuous, and auto, which switches from single to continuous when movement is detected, and DMF, which uses auto to focus, and while the shutter remains soft pressed, allows manual fine-tuning. The single and automatic modes support 5 area selections: wide, or the full auto, which usually picks the closest subject and focuses on it; zone, a large area movable with the joystick; center, a fixed spot used for the old-school focus and compose technique; flexible spot with 3 sizes. This is small. All can be moved and cover nearly the entire screen in small increments, making it possible to be very precise. There are 567 focus points in total. Turn on Phase Detect area to see the coverage of the Phase Detect points. Expand flexible spot expands if focus isn't found on the spot. Purple indicates the object can't be focused, in this case as it's too close. Switch to continuous to access the last area setting, tracking, which can be used in conjunction with all of the other area modes. I found flexible spot to be the most versatile. Let's go to drive modes to see how that works. Before switching burst mode on, I set the A7R IV to record 60 megapixel extra fine JPEGs to a freshly formatted 300 megabit UHS-2 card in slot 1. I configured my menu to assemble these settings together on one screen so they're easier to access, and the shutter default, electronic front curtain. I set conch shoot length to shoot only, which displays the buffer status while you're shooting, you'll see, and I set exposure, focus, and white balance to manual. There are 2 fast burst modes: high, which displays the scene in real time, and high plus, which shoots a faster rate by delaying the display. High looks like this. It has a pronounced blackout. You can see images being written to the card top left and the buffer screen left. High plus, with its lower screen refresh, looks like this. High took nearly 10 seconds to fill the buffer, taking 8 images per second, at which point the buffer indicates slow and continues at 1 per second. The save status indicates there are 63 frames to save to the card. That takes just under a minute to clear, during which time some options, like changing from high to high plus, are not available. High plus, the frame rate increases to 10 per second, filling the buffer in 7 seconds, and then slowing to about 1 per second. Now, I wondered if the rate was different with AFC and tracking on, even though there's nothing to track on my iPad stopwatch, but the rate didn't change. Strangely though, there's a gap of 3 seconds after the buffer fills before it takes the next image. What is unusual here is that changing to the 24 megapixel medium-sized JPEGs doesn't change the number of images the buffer holds, but neither does changing to RAW plus JPEG. Only when RAW is uncompressed does the buffer change to hold only 30 frames. and it takes less than 30 seconds to clear the files. I formatted a 95 megabyte UHS-1 card to test the writing speed. It still took a minute to save the buffer, so no advantage to buying faster cards here.